What is up, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the Soul Path Collective podcast, episode 1. You can't manifest the life you want until you leave the one that's familiar. So, kind of want to tell you guys a little bit more about my story and kind of just open up here. About a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I packed up my life and left the United States and kind of went out on this path and this journey of the unknown. Because I was living in LA for a long time. I got laid off a couple of times because of the pandemic. So right as I finished school is when the pandemic hit, and I was working for about 7 or 8 months before I got laid off from my first job. I know the millennials or Gen X who no, I think it's the millennials who went into the workforce during 2008. Those people kind of experienced something very similar as well. But for me, I remember waking up every day in Los Angeles and having to drive to this agency and having to fight traffic an hour or an hour and a half. I lived very, very far away from my job because I couldn't afford a place that was near it because they were paying us minimum wage. Meanwhile, the agents were making like millions of dollars, if not damn near, no, they were all making about 7 or 8 figures. I remember being in this frequency and this energy of being just so resentful of them. And I know there's that whole old saying of like, pick yourself up by the bootstraps. But what I really wanted to do was music, right? I wanted to make music. I wanted to get in with the right people, understand how the business or the industry works. Safe to say that job wasn't in alignment, but it was a great experience because I got to see the way the entertainment business is set up and the way everything works and how it all shakes down. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up getting laid off and, working some odd jobs here and there. I worked for an alumni organization, was more toxic than entertainment. My God, higher ed is, yeah, it's a doozy. If you haven't worked an admin job in higher ed, particularly in alumni organizations, I wouldn't recommend. Pays decent, but my God, you will have the headache of a lifetime. No disrespect to those who do, but if you do, I mean, at least in the one I worked in, it wasn't exactly the healthiest. So my experience with 9 to 5s, because nothing was ever truly aligned with what I wanted to do, and because I didn't have anything saved up, like I was just in survival mode working these jobs. And the only thing that I really enjoyed was bartending. And I went to bartending school for about a month and then got my certificate and learned how to, I became a mixologist. But I received an opportunity to work in Netflix, and then I quickly kind of just went back into the admin space because I have to say, Netflix was probably the best job I ever worked. Best people, best environments, right? Because it's a really big company. And I was a floater. So I would kind of like float around for different teams and different departments. Obviously, some were toxic and some were amazing. Felt like a family. But unfortunately, the opportunity for me never really came around to get on something permanent. And no matter how good of a job you did, you were never really rewarded. It was more about, I mean, there was a lot of nepotism, a lot of favors. People would hire people outside the company to fill those roles. And it was like climbing a ladder that wasn't really leading anywhere. So I got fed up with that. And I knew I wanted to make more money. I knew I wanted to live abroad, live overseas. Um, and that's kind of when, for me, when I received the opportunity, when I started making money online in sales, I quickly, packed up all my things and I left kind of abruptly, I might add. But that's just how fed up I was because I really hated my life and I wanted something new, right? And I'm going to talk about, having the courage to leave your comfort frequency is one of the things that's going to expand and catalyze your growth so much faster. I mean, we can talk about, going and visiting other countries and traveling. Okay, you've been to 42 countries, but, maybe you only stayed for 5 days and you stayed at a hotel. You didn't really, there was no attempt to integrate and to immerse and to learn the culture learn the language, make friends with the locals, see what their politics is like, see what that atmosphere is like. And when you start to cultivate these relationships when you live overseas, you just have so much, your compassion, your love, and your appreciation just skyrockets, man. I mean, because at least in America, when you're learning about other cultures on the news in other countries, it's always through this very American bullshit lens. Because anytime you hear anything about what's going on, they only tell you about 35% of the story, right? There's another 65% of that they just completely leave out. I don't know if my math isn't mathing, but um, when you integrate, for example, when I went to Croatia, was the first place I went. I had a blast. Um, Granted, Zagreb was boring as shit. I met a lot of really really cool, interesting people, other travelers who were of Croatian descent, right? But that was kind of like my first taste and my first experience, kind of with Balkan culture and Balkan people, and I was actually shocked at the similarities between their culture and my culture. Just as a Black American man coming from Southwest Atlanta, there were many things that we shared culturally. I'd say some aspects even mirrored each other. Right? It's very. I mean, I could say it's Catholic. It's somewhat reserved. It's got that small town feel, right? But sometimes the biggest manifestation isn't money or love, it's leaving, right? You have to look at Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 as a biblical metaphor for stepping into your divine purpose. And although a lot of the times when you do step into your divine purpose, sometimes there's no logic, rhyme, or reason behind it, but you know deep down that you have to do it, and the reasoning logically might not become clear or materialize until years later. So you become this new frequency in this new land, and unfamiliar surroundings force you into presence and rebirth. The spiritual power of disidentification, when no one knows who you are, you're finally free to become who you are, right? Manifestation is a movement. So for me, living overseas taught me that manifestation isn't always passive, right? It's not just vision boards, it's risk, it's tension, it's faith, it's alignment into action, right? And it has to begin with decision and choice. In order for love to exist, there must be a choice, right? And kind of just sort of hopped around. I mean, Serbia, Belgrade was, I think, some of the most fun I've had in Europe. Belgrade, Barcelona, um, even Vienna, even though it's not necessarily a city that's known for its parties and nightlife. A lot of people say, oh, it's deeply racist, but I always like to say no one does racism quite like we do in the States. Am I right? So their racism didn't phase me because growing up in the deep South in the United States, um, let's say in a pretty like Southern Baptist, moderately conservative backgrounds, when you deal with, I guess, that kind of racism, when you go overseas as a Black American, it doesn't, I don't know. I developed a spiritual bulletproof shield to people's ignorance and their fear, because that's really where their racism stems from, is their own ignorance and their fear that they themselves have refused to deal with. And then a part of that is also stereotyping and assuming, you know something about someone without having even spoken to them. It's very lazy. And if there's anything country hopping and living abroad has taught me, is you cannot judge a book by its cover, ever. Every place has a frequency, And if you're not manifesting, maybe your soils might not be the right place, but just know it all starts from within you. And going from Europe, living in Europe to, living in Brazil, living in Colombia, living in Chile, living in Argentina. It's kind of like I'm fulfilling the dream that my 21-year-old self wanted to do, but didn't have the grades to do when I was in university. I was like, oh, fuck. I want to go abroad, but like my GPA is like a 2.8, 2.9 something. So it's like I couldn't, it wasn't in the cards for me then because my GEs were holding me back, man. I freaking kicked ass and, finance and all the stuff that you would think would be hard. Like chemistry was hard as shit. But the stuff that you thought would be hard in school and in university ended up being the things that I excelled in, that I got A's and B's in. And the stuff you thought would be easy, I got like a C in because the professors were just dicks, because nobody took the class serious, and because university forced you to take those bullshit GEs. And at that time, I didn't know, oh, I can just take these at like a community college or whatever. I was like, okay, so when I get some money, I'm just gonna bounce and do it on my own. I'd say yeah, it can get lonely at times. At least that version of me thought that and believed that. But the more you dive into source, the more you connect, I guess you could say, with your oversoul, with God. Not the patriarchal man that people think live in the sky. I'm talking about the God within you, the genetic frequency that lives inside your DNA that runs through all living things, that God. Um, you realize that you're never truly alone, and you can always find community no matter where you go. I would say in most of the developed world, um, every place has a frequency. And so for me, bouncing around, it was kind of like, okay, which frequency is a match of my own? Because I was stuck for so long in California, and I felt like I didn't have wings. It's like imagine cutting off the wings of an eagle, or the eagle's wings haven't grown in yet. And you're just like, I really want to just go, go, go. It's like, what do you hope to find out there? It's like myself. I just want to see it. Uh, because before committing to anything, like a business or a relationship or living in a place, I want to have experience. First, I want to have the experience of experiencing these other places that I'm curious about. And right now, as of June 1st, 2025, things in my country back in the United States are kind of up in the air right now. It's a very scary time for some people, especially if you're not a US citizen. It's a very scary time. And we've seen mass migrations all over the world before. It's nothing new. There's been mass migrations from Italy, from Ireland, from China, from Japan, Nigeria. It's history just repeating itself, right? And I feel like I'm a part of that wave of people that has left their home country in search of kind of like a better life, or a life where I feel as though I don't feel like I'm getting robbed. And because there's pros and cons between living in places that are deeply regulated, meaning like there's laws on laws on laws on laws on laws on laws on laws, too many fucking rules. And then there's cons of living in places where there's not enough rules. You know, okay, so if this happens, what happens? Oh well, it's not really our fault. It's not our fault. So I'll give you an example. The other day, my debit card got stuck inside of an ATM, um, in one of the banks here in Chile. I'm not going to name names, but it's a pretty shitty bank. And machine took my card, and I was freaking out because I'm like, that's my only debit card. And so I went to the bank, and they were like, yeah, there's nothing we could do. And I was pretty upset about it. So I'm like, so what? I'm just, if I was in a place that was not as developed, because this is in a wealthy area in Santiago and this happened. So it's like, I was expecting just a bit, you know, a higher quality of customer service based on how these people present themselves and how they present their institutions. You think, okay, maybe they'll do something. At the very least, remove the machine, send somebody out to fix the machine. They did none of that. And I was really blown away by, I don't want to sound mean, but it was honestly just kind of pathetic, because you have the resources to fix something and you're just not doing it. I don't know why. Their reasons are their own. But that's one of the downsides of being in a place that is not as developed. There's less rules for things. And so a part of what you figure out as a traveler and as a nomad, because it is getting to the point where I'm just like, okay, I can live in two places. I think I'm at the point now where I've figured out what those places are and why I need to stay there, because there's gonna come a time when you're living someplace, if you're living abroad overseas, and you're gonna miss your family, depending upon how pleasant your family is, and you're gonna ask yourself, you're gonna be like, huh, why the fuck am I here? You're gonna ask yourself that question. If you stay in a place for 4 months, month four, month three, you're gonna start asking yourself that question. Um, and everyone's reason is different. I've been having thoughts about, okay, maybe I'll go back and live in California and San Diego, right? And I'm talking to myself, I'm like, God, why am I here? You know, like, why am I really here? Like, what is it I'm seeking? Is it inside of me? You know, what is it? And I think the answer has kind of revealed itself to me, is that I think I had stagnant trauma. Is the word I just made up. But it's basically when you live in a place for too long that you hate and you want to get out and you want to go somewhere else, but you can't. And I think that for me manifested into this form of trauma where it's like, okay, I feel like I need to be hopping around all the time. Um, but later I realized, okay, no, I'm looking for a second home. I'm looking for a place that frequentially matches my energetic signature and has the kind of lifestyle, the type of people that spiritually I agree with, right? Um, the seed is divine, which is you. But if the soil is wrong, the fruit never grows. And so, from this lived experience, some of you all are divine seeds, but you're just in the wrong soil. You're in the wrong places. And that's kind of how my worldview of parts of America have shifted, where it's like the soil is just going bad. Um, doesn't matter who you are, your color, your creed, your sexuality, the soil is kind of beginning to rot and it's showing in real time. And I think for me personally, that's what I have gotten away from. Because in order to step into the man I've always been, I needed to first leave. So if your manifestations feel blocked, then ask yourself, is the version of me I'm trying to become safe in the environment I'm in now? Or does my evolution require relocation spiritually, emotionally, or literally? And I'm going to leave you with that for the first episode of this podcast. Thank you so much. Love, light, and abundance to all of you. Be sure to subscribe and tune in for the next episodes. Purpose of this podcast and the intention is we're just going to be sharing and explaining the science behind spirituality and teaching you the subtle art of manifestation without giving a fuck. Love you. Until next time.